Good afternoon, alumni and friends, and welcome to this virtual reality homecoming 2020 at St. Ambrose University. I'm Ed Rogalski. For those of you who may not be familiar with me, I spent about 40 years of my life here at St. Ambrose in positions ranging from the dean to the president. People often ask me how I came to St. Ambrose and why, and that story is interesting in itself, and I do believe in destiny. But it goes like this. It was the spring of the year in 1968. I was a graduate student at the University of Iowa, just having finished a master's program and begun a doctorate degree. My future wife and I were students there, and we were planning to be married on June 1st. And at that time, I had looked at various positions across the country, had a number of offers, and was leaning towards a position at St. Louis University. When one day at my apartment, which I shared with three other graduate students, came a knock at the door, and here was this priest. His name was Monsignor Menke, and he was the then president of St. Ambrose, and he had heard about me from my pastor, Monsignor Matson. And Matson told them about my work in Fairfield, Iowa, and St. Ambrose then at that time was also looking for a dean. And Monsignor Menke wanted me to come and take a look at the position. I explained to him that I was far along in the process and that the likelihood was that I probably wouldn't be interested. That was day one. Day two comes a knock at the door, and there stands Monsignor Menke, asking me if I would come and take a look at this job at St. Ambrose, because he thought I would be the perfect person for the job. Once again, I demurred and told them that perhaps not, and we left it at that point. Then there was day three. Once again comes the knock at the door, and there stands Monsignor Menke, inviting me to come to St. Ambrose and take a look. Well, by that time he had worn me down, not necessarily physically, but emotionally, because I really felt I owed him the moment. So as luck would have it, I came to see St. Ambrose University. And there it happened. I fell in love with the place. The people, the campus, friendly, warm, inviting, caring, welcoming. So it was an easy decision. I came to become the Dean of St. Ambrose on August 1st of 1968. And that started my career. I spent 6 years as the Dean, then moved along to several different administrative positions, teaching some time in the Department of Education. And then in 1987, the call came that I should lead St. Ambrose, which had then, on that particular day, July 1st of 87, had become a university. So, in a nutshell, that is how I came here and why I came here. And let me tell you, it's been a wonderful time, a beautiful ride. People have asked if I might address the issue of what it means to be an Ambrosian. Well, you know, by definition, we all are. Whether we're engaged as students, faculty, or staff, we all belong to this wonderful place, and we naturally refer to each other by that title. But I've, over the period of 20 years, addressed graduating classes and have given them what's called a charge from the president. And I always talk about the fact that being an Ambrosian requires something extra. And I think it begins with the ability to maintain and continue the love of learning. You know, learning as a lifetime kind of opportunity. When you come to St. Ambrose, it's our responsibility to seek and teach the truth. And it's our expectation then that you become lifelong learners and seek that truth throughout your life. The other thing is that we also have required of you a sense of what we called learning the principles and the values of what this institution stands for. Some people refer to it by the title of Catholic Social Teachings, and by whatever standard, we often talk about peace and justice. But let me tell you that it's something more, because as an Ambrosian, I want you to be a champion for the cause of individuals who require your aid. Remember, the principle is you are your sister and your brother's keeper. And you follow the golden rule because you want to do to others as you wouldn't have them do to you. So if you follow those tenets, and if you champion the cause of justice in many ways, in whatever ways are appropriate for you, you are truly being an Ambrosian. And finally, it's about the call to service. And you can do that in so many ways. Even for this institution, we have a little paradigm that we talk about when we talk about serving. And we talk about the issues of time, talent, or treasure. And it's the idea of giving of yourself in any and all of those ways. As I get a little older, that sense of time becomes a lot more important to me than the others. So I'm a lot more willing to give of my treasure and whatever talent I might have. But I think you get the sense of things. It's about being there for people, doing your best, take care of those that stand in need, whether they're cold and hungry or have no place to live. And I find excellent models in all Ambrosians that I meet across the country who are doing wonderful things to profess this wonderful idea of serving others. It's not always been serious in terms of my times here, and particularly since it's a Jubilee year for the class of 70, I want to share a couple of vignettes and maybe give you some sense of history in terms of what homecomings might have been like and what they became, and maybe a little humor attached to some of it, if you will. But in 1970, homecoming consisted of a few activities. Mainly the parade. There was a homecoming parade. And the student clubs, we didn't have fraternities or sororities, but we had clubs and organizations, sometimes geographic ones, the Chicago Club, if you will, or the East Coast Club. And they would create these marvelous floats on these long bed trucks, 18-wheelers would have the total long. And they would go through downtown Davenport, and the community very much looked forward to it. Well, in 1970, I was the recipient of a little bit of a spoof. There was an organization on campus, a group of students that did a little underground newspaper, and they called it the Poam News, Poam meaning Polish American. And they would write little critiques of the administration and little spoofs on what was going on at campus time. Well, at that homecoming parade in 1970, the Poam Club had a float. And the float consisted of a 300-plus pound go-go dancer named Baby Dumpling. And I'm happy to say the float did not win the contest, but it sure drew a lot of attention from not only the public but the media. That homecoming, by the way, also became the nexus for what would come in the future, because that was the first year where Ambrose selected their own homecoming queen, just having gone co-ed in 1969. And then from on, the big bonfire. And they used to take the first-year students in kind of a modified little hazing program, and they would collect wood throughout the early start of the semester and build this huge bonfire. And on Friday night, the eve of homecoming, they would ignite that bonfire, and it was huge. In fact, we had a little house that adjoined a campus next to an empty lot where they had created this bonfire that year. And our youngest son at that time, and my wife and I sat on the sofa, looked out the window because we could see it there. But the heat was so great we couldn't stand it. And the next day when I went out, the paint had blistered on the side of the house. So you can imagine the magnitude of that. And then there was this contest that went on between Augustana and St. Ambrose to see who could torch each other's bonfire. Well, as fate would have it, the bonfire went by the by because of environmental concerns and what happened with the need for some controls of fires and pollution. So an early precursor to what we're experiencing, in fact, this very day, September 14th, as we're recording this. And then those things dropped off as football became part of the picture again, first as a club sport, then as an intercollegiate sport. And towards the recent past, the killer bee, as people got to think a little healthier and would have an early morning run to get themselves started on Saturday of homecoming. So in somewhat of a nutshell, that's my recollection of some of the things that I'm thinking about, at least as I'm speaking to you this afternoon. Finally, I want to talk to you about something that I was able to accomplish at the end of my career as president of St. Ambrose. I retired in 2007, August 8th of 2007, and that was the 125th year of the history of St. Ambrose. And heretofore, there was no real official documented history, serious history. There was something that was done for the 100th year, but it was not what I would call a classic depiction of the times and place of St. Ambrose in the 125 years of its existence. So I called upon a professor in the history department, Father George McDaniel. Father George and I got to know each other even before I arrived at St. Ambrose, and I asked if he would be willing to undertake the task of writing the history of St. Ambrose through the 125th year. With the offer of some release time, he was glad to accept, and over a period of 2 years, he wrote a wonderful chronicle of the life and times of St. Ambrose. It's just something that I recommend to you for your consideration. It's a great read. So I commend that to you. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to say hello and to welcome you. And I trust that we hope to have an opportunity where we can see each other in person. Best wishes to you all. Thank you.